doing this, she's getting minutes from all those different meetings.
Yeah.
And she's just upset with you, just, if you don't want them.
Well, those are nice too. Now that you can just file it,
Right.
you know.
And she'll send them to you electronically, so you just put them on your disk or whatever.
Yeah.
We'll call the meeting to order for Monday, February 27, 2012 at 6 p.m. We have a roll call. Patrick Green. Here. Scott Stevens. Present. Keith Sadowski. Here. Kelly Collegio. Here. Stephen Warner. Here. Robert Bacamino. Any motions to excuse?
Support.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? None being opposed, motion carries. Adoption of the agenda. Motion by Green.
Support.
Support by Stevens. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4, Mr. Secretary.
Discussion of the city of Warren's Housing and Community Development 5-year consolidated plan for July 1, 2011 through June 30th, 2016.
Let the record reflect that at 6:02, Mr. Bacamino joined us just as we called the meeting to order.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The floor is yours.
Okay. Mr. President, council members, although the agenda was phrased in such a way that it's a 5-year plan, action plan, this is really more intended to discuss with the council the funding for this year, which I explained in my cover letter. As indicated on the 5-year plan. The 5-year plan shows a historical breakdown of what we've received in community development block grant funds, home, and HAPA funds, and then what is estimated for 2012. And the reason we say that it's estimated is because we are still receiving information that any of the funds in the categories that we have listed could be used, as we know. But we wanted to have an opportunity to discuss with the council what the eligible activities are for community development block grant funds, and then the home and the HAPA funds are much more limited, but because the community development block grant funds is our largest pool of funds, we would like to have some input from the city council so that when we prepare our proposed plan, which will begin to be published in the newspaper according to HUD requirements, we will have a better idea of what the council would like to see in which area. And historically, if you flip back into the pages just past that 5-year breakdown or historical, it first covers the national policy objectives and eligible activities, which most of you are probably familiar with. Those have not changed over the years that we've been receiving funding. And then we break down for the council on page 3 what 2012-2013 action plan would be if we use the same percentage of funding that we've used in the past in these areas that are eligible. And it's just a suggestion. It's to show the council where the council has wanted to see the funds in the past, but we very much like your input and hope that if there are any changes, that we talk about those this evening so that we can prepare the proposed plan as the council would like to see it.
Borges, why does the administration cost go up in 2012 versus 2011? I noticed it's going up about 6,500.
Basically because the amount that we can charge off to administration, we try to use the maximum amount of funds that we can, which is,
It's a percentage then?
yes, sir.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
And because of those individuals that are bargaining unit members, their benefits, their wages, and so forth have increased, we increase the administrative portion.
Okay, and then I noticed the code enforcement for rentals are up as well.
Correct. Then we also have a couple of part-time
No,
individuals.
it went to zero, I'm sorry, the housing code rental ordinance went from 140,000 to zero. Kind of, see, page 3, 2011-12, there's 140,000 allocated for housing code and rental ordinances,
Correct.
and then it drops to zero. That caught my eye, and that's something I'm trying to help the rental ordinances. You know, it's a lot of council get a lot of calls on rentals. Roads.
Go ahead.
This is like a suggested allocation, and there's really, as the grant amount goes down, there's not enough money to do everything anymore.
Okay.
And so it's like, it's just a suggestion, and in talking with Mr. Simone, he said that they're pretty much, the rental ordinance could be self-funding. So, that, you know, the little bit that we add to the piece isn't, you know, there's a better use for it. And the other thing is, as the years have gone by, the administrative burden of keeping track, we probably spend, you allocate 40,000, we probably spend another 40,000 in administration justifying the expense. In terms of keeping track of where the inspections, if they wanted to, you know, we have to keep track of where the inspections are, what the outcomes were, when compliance was achieved.
All right, I noticed that it says public improvements by 2012 suggestions from council welcome. And then in 2011, though, it didn't have it, so I'm wondering.
Well, in 2011,
This is just the proposal, yeah. I'm
we
just saying.
budgeted money for MacArthur, and that's a question that's on the table too tonight, is now that the millage has passed, the engineering department's getting ready to bid that as a expanded
Right.
project, and you still want the CDBG funding in there, because the way it goes out to bid, whether Davis Bacon is included or not, and it will depend upon whether there's a CDBG funding piece, and
Does engineering have that information for us right now? Is it overlapping of these funds?
They're waiting basically until we met with the council,
Okay.
so that we can instruct them to proceed either without the Davis Bacon requirements, because it does tend to increase the cost of the project sometimes, because they have to pay union wages and higher wages in some instances. So it's just a question that we have to the council is, since we do have the millage passed now, do we want to continue to fund a little bit of concrete repair, or do we want to go away from that until the millage is expired? It's just another.
And one last question with the rental then. Has Mr. Palachek given us a plan yet for the capturing more revenues? I know there's talk of that, to fund the,
my conversation was with Mr. Simone, not
Mr.
Mr.
Simone? Okay, because I haven't heard a direct solid plan. I hear that there is a way to capture that, but I just haven't seen it and estimated how much we
You
can
don't
capture.
trust Mr. Simone? As over.
I trust Simone for the numbers that we have. I want to know the plan, how much money will we capture for rental before we zero it out, that's all.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And then another issue that you really need to consider is there's two code enforcement pieces. There's the funding of the partial funding of the rental program, and then there's the funding of somebody through the health department, which does property maintenance inspections.
Right.
Whether you want to continue with the health department, whether you want to transfer that to somebody in-house, or whether you just want no block grant funds there at all.
Which you just dealt with not
Yep, we just did.
too long ago, so you're familiar with those costs, and they keep rising as well. building department insists that it's a very important portion of the funding, and if we take that, even one of the inspectors away, that will have some
Oh, sure.
impact on their light sweeps, and so there's always too many projects, too much work to be done, and not enough money, but,
Those are the ones that just jumped out at me right away.
Sure.
Thank you for answering those questions.
and then could I raise one last issue about funding before we, move on? Because of the reduction in most departments' budgets this year, as has been in the past couple of years, Mr. Bowman approached me and asked if there's any way that we could assist in funding the costs that would be associated with salaries for the personnel that operate the programs at Owen Jacks. And my initial reaction was that I didn't believe that salaries were eligible because they're considered operational costs. So Rose researched that with HUD, and HUD said that it could be considered, but it has to be included as part of that cap for our community service programs. So that means if we give, and he was asking for $50,000. So if we give 50,000 or 40 or 30 or whatever it is that the city council might decide upon, then that means, of course, that's 25 or 30 or 40,000 less in another program that we're now funding or currently or have that. So I wanted to raise that because it's a very important piece of the Parks and Rec program, the programs down at Owen Jacks, but it's also it would be a large chunk of that 50% cap.
Would that have been distinguished in part-time or full-time salary?
It's both. He didn't give me a breakdown, but I told him I would raise it and I could get a breakdown for the council. It's not something that the council has to decide tonight, but the more direction you give us, then better off we'll be in proceeding with our budget as it has to be published. I believe that there could be changes made right up until, if you look at your calendar, and I don't mean to jump around, but the public hearing, if the council schedules it tomorrow evening, will be held on April 10th. And we only have a month after that to get the entire plan into HUD in order to meet our deadline. So that's a lot of decisions to make in a short period of time with limited budget.
You want to finish up?
Piggyback on that, where currently do the funds come from to pay the employees at Owen Jacks?
General fund.
Out of the general fund or out of the Parks and Rec?
Well,
Yeah, the
yeah.
general fund, right, so they have a millage for that.
Yeah.
they do, but it's also supplemented by general fund. And I don't have that breakdown in front of me tonight, I do
No, it's gotta
apologize.
be at all.
Comes out of millage.
Comes out of the village.
It has to come out of the millage.
My understanding is that the part-time staffing was not covered by millage. I can get that information out to the council by email, if you'd like.
We're talking about budgets right now, maybe we'll just stick to this a little bit more and we can maybe have these answers.
Go around and maybe that should be looking at another millage or whatever. Or
Yeah, we'll ask those, I think there's questions that we can answer. Go ahead.
Okay.
I know the individual activities we can talk about how they apply and get back to that as we go along. But on page 2, the areas for CDBG activities that I'd like to see the focus be on would be rental housing, clearance demolition, code enforcement, infrastructure improvements, and crime prevention, public safety. I think we spent a lot of years, and I know that some of the money between home and CDBG, whether it be in the owner rehab and then the delivery of the project, both programs, but I think we've all looked at
you
Can
say
you
you,
repeat it and talk just those,
I'm
repeat what you
sorry.
just said, just a little bit louder?
I want to do this. Say hi.
we weren't sure if you said you wanted it to
This is,
remain or?
these are the areas that I'd like to see CDBG focus on.
Okay.
Rental housing, clearance demolition, code enforcement, infrastructure, crime prevention and safety. We've done a lot with,
We've
Page
done-
two.
We've done a lot with
Rental,
with the housing.
first part housing.
When you say rental housing, what do you mean?
I don't know, but that's the area that you said you haven't, what I'm saying is those are the areas in my
Do you
ideas of.
mean making loans to landlords or grants to
Well, no,
landlords?
I'm looking at
Fix up their
that, I'm
housing?
looking at that list you gave us of these are the CDBG eligible activities. I don't know what your definition is, which goes back to their definition. So I may have an idea in my head of what it means, but we're gonna have to find out at a later date. What falls under rental?
It
What
can
do
be
they
a
mean by
couple of
that?
different,
Because I think where all of us have talked about over the last couple of years, when things have come up under this program and the various programs, is that, you know, when we started it with the acquiring houses, tearing them down, rebuilding them, we're spending this much money and selling them for that. Well, and I know it's not a revenue-making project, and it will bring things to us in the long run. When we have short-term needs right now, that we can maybe we do have a road millage. Can we supplement certain areas? I don't know. Can we reduce the cost of the millage to the residents through this even a little bit? I think where this council's going, and just listening to over the last couple of years, we need to take the money and use it in short term. Where in the past, we were taking for the acquiring and building houses, that's going to be a long-term benefit. And right now, with everybody's budgets, we need short-term application as well.
So rental housing can mean one of two things.
Okay.
It can mean code enforcement, or it can mean rehabilitation. What are you talking
I don't think I'm in favor of rehabilitation of a commercially owned piece of property. But
So you're talking about code
there was another
enforcement.
line down there for code compliance.
So you're talking about code enforcement,
Yes.
code compliance.
we just wanted to clarify that.
So you're talking about funding and rental inspector.
That's right.
Right, thank you. Mr. Stevens.
Thank you. As you remember, we held this meeting basically with the last council, and the number one priority was owner-occupied rehabilitation. You look at your list, or your figures, and on 3, and owner rehab projects, we expended $89,000, right? Or allocated $89,000. Administration was $168,500.
Yes,
All right, and I'm not sure what owner rehab delivery is. What is that exactly?
That pays for the inspector's time and the lead clearance tests and all of the things that go into, it's sort of administration for that project,
So more administration fees.
more administration fees.
And
And
the $168,500, how many salaries are paid out of that?
What?
Your salary is paid out
I'm
of?
sorry, the administration, I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about rehab delivery. The administrative salary,
How many
all
salaries paid out?
of the admin is rolled together, and we keep timesheets. And so, there's
So
essentially,
a portion of your pay, a
There's a
portion of...
portion-
the majority, if I could interrupt, I'm sorry, no, sure.
Yeah.
The majority of Rose's salary is paid from general fund. And most of, all of the other employees in this department are paid from administration.
And how many employees would that be?
We have 2 full-time, 3 full-time, one is an inspector, one's a finance person, one is
Who's the finance person?
Gina Hensley.
Who?
Gina Hensley.
Oh, okay.
And
Go
then,
ahead.
and then we have a part-time, we call them inspectors, but they do a lot more than inspect.
Right.
And he is hourly. He's not a full-time salaried employee in terms of receiving benefits. And then, karate, who's, we call her intake, but she does a lot more than that too. So, 3 full-time employees with salary and benefits. And 2 part-time without.
And that includes the owner rehab's delivery too.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The 4 individuals you're talking
There's
about
4 full-time employees.
Right.
are paid from the administration, 168.5, and the owner rehab, 195.
And from the home administration and from the NSP administration.
Exactly.
Also, they draw money out of those too.
Yes.
Okay.
Money
Not-
comes
not
from
just the
all of those,
CDBG.
no,
No.
no. We keep time sheets and we bill our time to whatever activity we're looking at.
Now, the code enforcement, housing code and rental ordinance, that 140 right there, that's a salary too, isn't it? Isn't that for the county?
That is
Inspector?
one of the contracts.
It's a combination of the money for the county and we partially reimburse the city for city employees who do rental inspections. It's about 100 for one, 40 for the other.
All right, and then public service, the 102, that goes to these different, so the vast majority of this money is going to pay salaries.
Yes?
Now, you mentioned earlier on the rental portion of it, there was rental rehab and rental inspection. Do we also pay, like say there's somebody that's renting a house and they don't have the money to make their rent back?
Oh.
Will we also help them out with their
Part of
rent?
one of the public services is the Salvation Army
City emergency.
does pay rent in emergency situations.
So, well, what do we see on our list of bills when you talk about
That's special to the HOPWA program.
HOPWA? Yeah, okay. That's not CDBG, but it's out of these same monies that we're
Right.
talking about. Right?
Correct.
So we also pay people's rent
Correct.
when they can't make it.
No, there's 2 programs in HOPWA.
No.
One is that we pay people's rent when they can't make it. The other thing is that out of the HOPWA money, there's something similar to a Section 8 program
Yeah,
where the people are paying 30% of their rent and we're paying the balance.
okay.
And so it's like an every month.
Subsidized.
But the ones that we see
Those are
on
the ones
our
you would-
list of bills are the
Those.
ones where
Those are the ones you see on your list of bills would be the
I
ones
can't make
where-
my rent, they
No,
apply to you.
no, you wouldn't know those. Because that would be like a reimbursement to the Oakland Livingston Human Services Agency, which you in your mind would never associate that.
Well,
with
what
paying
we're looking
somebody's
at
rent
is-
payment. So when you see like a payment to a landlord, that
Yeah.
is the program that's called tenant-based rental assistance, which is similar to a Section 8 program.
And that's on an
And that's
ongoing
on an
basis.
ongoing
It's
basis.
subsidized monthly.
When we discussed this before, what we were talking about was trying to get more money to people to fix up their houses, put roofs on them, put windows, take care of the envelope basically, so that, how are we gonna be able to do that?
Turn to page.
Because what
There's
I see
a-
happening
On page
is,
4, it says owner rehab.
page what, 4?
Page 4 at the bottom.
Yeah,
Says as of February 8th, there is approximately 400,000 funds available for new loans. We anticipate making 10 loans in the amount of 250,000 through 10 additional loans, with 10 additional loans for owner rehab through the end of June.
in the amount, the total amount of 200,000.
And total amount of 250,000. So each loan's about 25,000.
Okay.
And so that would leave a carryover of 150,000, if my math is correct here. And then, we're recommending, if you leave, whatever, depending upon what you do with the budget. Right now, rehab is funded jointly from home and CDBG.
Right.
You need to understand that the home funds cannot be used for a repair program, it has to be total rehab. And so I think what are we recommending here?
What do they, just we just got.
Owner rehab is 251.
And, Rose,
251.
how do you determine a home repair to a total rehab?
Home repair is essentially city certs. So house up to code is completed.
Okay.
So, I mean, we don't just do where a roof wouldn't necessarily take care of the other city search stuff.
So the difficulty if it's not occupied, even if it is occupied, once the inspection's done, and they have a laundry list of repairs like anybody would if they were trying to obtain a CFO, we can't just go in and use those funds for, minimal repairs or specific repairs unless we meet the other ones. That's where the difficulty comes in doing like roofs and windows and siding or something to increase the aesthetic ability of the home in the neighborhood. We have, we agree that that would help, but when you walk in the home and you look at the other repairs that are necessary, in many of these homes, the walls are bowing, there's mold problems, there's electrical problems.
That's because the roof wasn't repaired.
That's true.
Yeah, but it's because we've been letting these things go too long. I'm sorry, Mr. Swansky, but I haven't finished my line of questioning yet.
No, that's fine. You're actually going right.
Right. When you look at going in for city service and doing all that, those things, those people don't necessarily need all that. Some of these people that come and have been turned away for loans or have been on the list for a number of years, and all they need is maybe a couple windows and a roof or something like that. And I think that we need to spend more money on that. And as you know, I'm not in favor of us funding the county health department. Since we already pay taxes to the county, they can pay for their own people. And we should still enjoy those services. But that's where I'm at, is more money. You're looking at
Instead of $10,000, $25,000 loans, we need
$15,000, $20,000 loans. I mean, it all depends, I mean, if you got a complete tear-off, those things are, but complete projects. But somehow we need to get more money into the owner rehab, projects and out of the delivery. When we got 195,000 in the delivery end of it and only 89,000, we need to flip those two numbers.
Well,
There's something
you
wrong
have to
with where.
understand that you've got an individual whose salary is probably in the mid-60s. By the time the city adds all of the things that they add on top of that, 40% for the VIVA and whatever they're taking to subsidize retirees' pension and all that stuff, and that money is going to come from someplace else if it doesn't come from the grant. The city's going to have to spread it out over the other employees.
It's true. The other difficulty,
Wait, let's get down to,
That's all for right now. Go ahead.
Whatever.
I guess to the bottom line. How much money do we, as a city council, do we have authority over all this money? Can we tell you where to spend it? Yes or no?
no. And the reason is that
Then
HUD,
why are we here?
well, because there are categories that within the eligible activities that you can split up the way that the council feels is most needed.
Well, if we don't have any authority over this, why, we don't have any say. Can we, I'm trying to.
I was gonna say, you're,
But I know,
you do have
so
authority.
far you're right, but go ahead.
You do have authority over the activity type. So there's no doubt that there's many needs and not enough money to go around. But HUD has very strict requirements too, and they are not going to allow us to go in and use this money to repair, say, I'm just throwing out a number because I don't know how much roofs would go for if you bid out 25 roofs.
I know, I hate, maybe I drink the coffee, but, I've heard this, for 16 years, now it's the 17th year, about the HUD's requirements and the federal government, and, sometimes I think, why are they even doing this, and we've thought that for many, many years. I just need to know where we have authority as a city council so that we can take action here. Quite frankly, I see, you know, everyone's asking some good questions. I see $800,000. I see over $1 million in which you have brought forth to us. And we have on page 3 and page 4, and there's some information on page 6, and there's goals here. What can we spend, where's our authority, and where can we do it?
You can put together a budget. We will tell you if it's an eligible activity or not.
The eligible activities are pretty
Tell
much,
us, maybe I have to know what are the eligible activities.
they're on page 2. And I know some of them are general, so if you want us, if you have a very specific need within those activities, we can get back with you very quickly on whether or not something within the realm of that activity is eligible.
Mr. Stevens has asked, and it seems to be the, and even Mr. Stadowski, everybody, homeowner rehab. Roofs have got to get fixed, windows, and I think that's maybe a priority because if you can't stop the water from coming down into the house through the windows or the roof, you're going to have huge problems. I mean, that's where you start. And I also know problems with foundations if you don't get water out of there as well, and those are going to just melting away because of all this rain. How much money is there for us to do that?
If you're only looking to repair the roofs and windows, then we're limited. If you want to take more money and put it into that category, some of the other services that we provide will suffer and will have to be reduced.
All right, so, I mean, is that our call?
Yes, absolutely.
How much?
All right, you want to do a repair program. Okay. Next year, you've got $870,000 in CDBG money. 20% can be allocated for admin, and it pretty much takes the full 20% to run the program. So that's $175,000 off the top. And then you've got another, right now you have another 102 for public services, all the little social agencies.
Those,
That can go up to 120. After that, you can get rid of them all, you can leave them all. If you want to do crime prevention, it's going to fall into that category. And then after that, you can do what you want.
put it all
We'll tell you if it's
to
eligible.
homeowner assistance if you want.
How much money can we put in owner rehab?
We got 890.
870.
I'm sorry, 870 minus, what did we say, 175
roughly.
minus 120, 575,000.
All right, so it's up, we can allocate $575,000, the way we want it.
And then you wouldn't have anything else to fund. So you wouldn't have any
That's
money
if
for
we
anything
went,
else.
if we put it all in the owner rehab, that's it.
For this next fiscal year.
Okay, but
But
we
I
have
do-
575, we have the authority to move that around where we want.
Absolutely. I do want to point out again though, and I know I've already said this and you realize this, but the Senior Citizen Chore Program that we participated in, we just did some stats on that, and I thought I provided it to council in another report, and I apologize, I don't have it at the top of my head, but we have many seniors that receive grass cutting services and snow removal services, and that's a large part of our community services budget. There's also all these other, the homeless, Turning Point, St. Vincent de Paul, MSU, Salvation Army.
No, right?
We wouldn't have any of that. None of those services would then be available. So, you know, it is.
It would be 575 minus 102 if we keep those 102 there, am I right?
No, I already took that out.
Oh, so, okay, then we still got
So you got
575.
575. You need somebody to run the program. So you still need your delivery person. Because who's going to run the program? Who's going to make the inspections? Who's going to write the specs?
Well,
Who's
we
gonna
figured
do-
that could come out of the 16085.
Well, that's the person who does somebody has to document that the people are eligible And that's where her salary comes from, is out of the 168.5.
One person doesn't do it all, obviously.
No.
There's different functions.
All right, back to my, after you take all the administrative costs, how much is left over if we're gonna leave 102 in the public service?
Well, I subtracted 120 because you can go up to 120, you have 575 left.
Okay,
Or
but
if you
I,
want
And so
to
then-
increase you want to increase by 20, then you're at almost 600,000. Just under
so if
600,000.
we put 600,000 in the owner rehab, we could do that.
Yes.
I
Now,
thought you
with-
said we needed someone to deliver it, which would take the 89,000 out of it.
Which would take which would probably take 200,000 out of it.
So you're saying it takes 30%, 30, 20, 30, how much percentage to deliver?
It's about 25%.
All right, so whatever, our delivery cost is gonna be 25% whatever we put into that.
Well,
Is that HUD required?
Your delivery cost is fixed by the cost of hiring an inspector.
No, but you, okay. I thought
Well,
so.
that's what's happened. If you get down to it, you know what's going on, right? How many people are in delivery right now? What did we say, 4 people are coming out of 195?
One person comes out of 195, plus all of the miscellaneous stuff. We do title work for every loan, recording fees.
All the surveys and all that stuff, too,
And
comes out of
the
there. That's right.
inspections and the.
Yeah.
So that's part of
There's
delivery, not
part of it,
administration.
Yeah, we pay,
Make sure
for one day of the part-time heating inspector's time and.
So how much can we cut out of the 195? I mean, we've already allocated the
It's
surveys, the
pretty-
lead-based paint,
You're pretty much there.
we're right there. So we need to deduct that 195 from that 600,000.
Now, we supplement that, you also have home funds that
Right.
you can spend on owner rehab.
That's on
Okay,
page
yeah,
4,
that's right.
right?
Yeah. CCG.
And
We're
the
just on
delivery's
CDBG,
already
then we
paid
have home too.
by community development, so you're at 250,000 there.
How much?
250 for owner rehab out of home.
So another 250.
That's from home.
Yeah, from home.
Let's see, what do you want to do with owner rehab and the public service?
I think that's a great idea, thank you, let's do that. Are we in agreement as a council for that?
Well, that's what we're looking for.
All right,
Rose, Nancy, run this again
Okay.
with what we just talked about. Owner rehab, the public service, and your admin. And then and pull money from home and put money from CDBG and show us how much we have to utilize for that. And then, give us some details, please, when you report back to us on what you just talked about with title work and surveys and whatnot. So we know what goes into the delivery. Because we see the word delivery, we think of.
I'd like
guy gets on a
I'd
truck.
like a detailed breakdown on shore, because I'd like to see how much, I mean, obviously this year we're not gonna spend as much on snow shoveling, but,
Right.
I'm just curious as to what we've been allocating, what we've been spending for
We
the
can
cost.
get those.
You allocate about 35,000, and they spend about 30, and then the 5,000 is usually recaptured and rolled into the
Rolled
next
over.
year. Because they can't predict snow, they try
Right.
not to enroll too many clients.
I understand, I understand.
And
kind
so
of-
last
And we can give you
year,
an average over a 5-year period.
last year 99, they assisted 99 people, probably about 95 they submitted.
What's the contract on that? Is it when it snows or is it a flat contract?
No, they're paid, they bill us every time they send somebody out.
Every time they
So
perform.
if they don't send
any
anybody
service.
out, then we don't have to, oh, that's in regards.
That's
Okay.
correct.
That's interesting.
Okay, so we'll rework this and send it back to you.
Please.
So no code enforcement, no public improvements,
Right.
just public service, administration, and owner rehab.
Yes,
And on the home piece,
same thing.
well, the home piece, you have
We only have
you have a second requirement on home. You have charter reserve. 15% of the funds have to be allocated through a charter, which is currently Habitat for Humanity. So that's where we get to the
So we're already maxed out with our owner rehab there anyways, right?
Well, let's see, where are we at? We're saying,
It's the only thing on the sheet.
We've
Yeah.
already
We paid
counted
for
the
it?
250.
250.
It's like 300,000 for owner rehab, depending upon, that includes program income, so it can vary depending on how much program income we get. And then take out the 15% for the CHODO set aside, and that's it. So that, we've essentially done that with home. It's just owner rehab and the money that has to go to the CHODO by the HUD
Now,
regulations.
You said, we don't have to be utilizing Habitat for Humanity. We can utilize different contractors if we
No,
want.
it has to be a CHODO, which is a nonprofit community housing development organization. Currently, we use Habitat for Humanity. I think there's been some interest expressed by McRest in becoming a CHODO.
Yeah.
And I think that Community Housing Network out of Oakland County, they do work in Macomb County as well, and I think the county may use them as a CHODO. So it has to be, it can't be a for-profit developer.
Right, but let me take that a step farther. It doesn't have to be a complete build. It can be rehab work, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so there's more money that could go to rehab.
We
Through
don't
CHODO.
want- We don't want to
Well,
try
but
to build
it's not,
another home and try to
it
sell
doesn't
it,
go
right?
into owner rehab though.
What's that?
It doesn't go into owner rehab. They would be like buying a house and rehabbing
Right.
it, and then selling it to one of their clients.
Okay, so
So basically,
somebody
still be
very
rehab.
low or moderate buys a house and it needs some repairs.
no, the CHODO buys it, the nonprofit buys it,
Okay.
fixes it up, and then sells it to one of their clients. Or what the Community Housing Network does, I don't know if they'd be interested in Warren, is that they actually, their main client base is people who have, who are either developmentally disabled,
Right.
and they buy houses and they hold like a master lease, and then they rent them to their client base and provide supportive services to go along with it.
Okay, I understand.
Just one quick question with the Habitat. I know from working with the certain project that we worked on in the city, that at the end, the person that received the home was forced to sign a paper stating that if you passed away, the house would go back to Habitat. Is that common? Is that just common, or is that just a special case?
That was a special case with him.
Okay.
They have to, they have to.
He raised most of his money, but even if he was ever to marry, it wouldn't go to his family, it would go back to him.
I think that it was, I think there was like, that was only within the first so many years, but I'm not really sure. I was a little surprised at that.
Yeah, it was kind of disturbing, because it was kind of his home in a way to start with, and it kind of ended up not being his home or something happened.
I think you can sense where council wants to get these people whatever help they can get in order to fix the homes and fix the existing residential lot rather than build any more. So with
I
that,
just have one quick
Yes.
question, just before we end. Just because it's the first time I heard of it, the city actually has a program through one of these that subsidizes Section 8 housing in the city? Did I understand that correct, or
The
did
city
I not?
receives HOPWA funds, which stands for Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS.
Okay,
And it's only through that program that it works. That program is actually for a 5-county region: Macomb, Oakland, Lapeer, Livingston, and St. Clair. The city gets the money because it's the fiduciary, because we're the largest city in that region. And so it's only through that program, so people have to have either HIV or AIDS.
It's not like a
And-
typical Section
Okay,
8
so it's not
housing
typical
that
Section
But
eight.
it's,
we hear
it
provide.
functions like a Section, you run it like a Section 8 program.
All right,
In terms
thank
of
you.
not reinventing the wheel.
all right, great.
I know you probably get tagged every year regardless of the matter, but each another year. Another program, another council.
It's just
It's the
very
nature of the
difficult
beast.
because there's so many needs and,
Yes.
when we first started our budget, the funds were decreased by an overall 32%, something like that, and we were like, oh my goodness.
It probably need to be decreased more, and maybe to some extent, no, I'm not gonna say it, but suffice it to say, we're gonna probably see cuts depending on the election. And so
Yes.
we're all gonna have to learn to live with whatever we got. Now, how much has it gone down? Let's just say 8 years ago, what was this fund?
Well, I don't know about 8 years ago, but there was a point where we were getting $1.5 million, plus we were getting another $500,000 in
I
program
remember
income.
those days.
Yeah, now we're lucky to get $80,000 in program income, and we're down to $800,000 in entitlement, so it's gone down by half.
How has the employees gone down as well, staffing it?
Staffing's gone up, and staff costs have gone up.
So when the staff cost goes up and our money's coming down, that's not a very good signal.
No.
In 2006, CDBG had 886,739, and the program inclusive incorporated, no, that was incorporated. That was
Yeah,
352,950.
Yeah, really, the grant amount started going down after the Clinton administration.
Are we saying the administrative costs are going up and the money's coming down? Shouldn't that be balanced a little bit?
Somehow.
Well,
Just from an economic
Yes.
point of view, I mean, are we doing something wrong?
because it doesn't operate, obviously you all know that, like the general fund, yes, it should. But if we're going to continue the same program, we're still using the funding, it's just that if we have full-time employees, those costs increase. Even though no wages have been increased, there's other benefits that continue to increase. And we have two part-time individuals as it is that do not receive any benefits.
Okay, thank you. Is that it? Any,
I would like to just say one
Yes.
thing, is that I know that some people really don't like the buying the houses thing, but you have committed yourself to that path. NSP is this huge elephant in the room. And at your next council meeting, you're going to receive some requests to purchase homes to meet our obligations under NSP. Failure to meet the obligations under NSP means you not only repay what you haven't spent, but you repay what you have spent.
Well, I think we're committed not to make,
But
not
NSP
to use
is
any more money.
Different pool of
okay?
money.
I believe that. I think you have a council here that's not gonna, bite their nose to spite their face type situation, and you wanna limit your losses as much as possible. It's just that it just doesn't look good, and these are tough economic times. I mean, we've sold them at a profit at a certain time, maybe it's all gonna work out in the end, but we're not gonna lose out on that. I don't think you have to worry. We're just gonna complain about it.
No, go ahead. We're going to
Right,
solve
you
the
guys,
budget problem
I
right
think
now.
that's a feeling.
Oh, yeah, the NSP is different from this. I mean, we understand, what's got to be done with NSP. Obviously, I mean, I changed my vote on an item, and I'm still getting grief from it. But anyways.
We're so limited there, and we don't want to, return the funds, obviously, but.
Right, we don't want to return it.
Can I mention one last thing, and we'll, if the council doesn't have any more questions? Mrs. Furlong is contemplating retiring this year, if you haven't already heard, and her last day is scheduled at this point to be May 8th, with her actual last day being June 30th. So, she has a just insurmountable amount of experience and knowledge in this area, and so she just said, we're gonna fix her budget problem right now. But that's really not true, because we have somebody that has, I have experience and knowledge in some of the areas, not as much as Rose, and I also have other responsibilities. So I just wanted to mention that, if the council wasn't aware of that.
Do these budget run the same time as our budgets?
Yes.
Okay. Rose, did you pick that day just because the budget ends in that period?
No.
All right, I understand.
And Mr. Simone says, because I still get to change my mind, that I have to stay in the budget one more cycle.
All right, where's the
I'm sure
agenda?
Yeah, because they're not here.
And you can make a motion.
Motion recess.
Motion to, we'll recess until the next group comes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Yes,
Good
thank
luck.
you.
It's always really, always heard, I know, like, let's see,
It's, you know, it all depends on who. You know, it's really
how much, right?
and they don't, you have to
Why
go
even
without,
send it there?
without somebody in that seat for a
How
while,
many there? How many
or
dollars?
if Kirk leaves,
Well, yeah, I'm talking about.
doing the rehab, I mean,
Don't mind.
yeah, because if you're doing rehab.
That's a little spirit, at least we got that.
Maybe I'll change it.
No, I just got one.
I think she should stay at least until she's 25.
How about Baco? Who's in City Hall?
No.
Could wish.
February 2nd.
Hey, John, what was that called when those CTNs were issued, the tax anticipation notes, we were doing a little bit better on that, what's that word called? When we did those tax anticipation notes, CTNs, remember those?
I do.
And we were making money off better arbitrage. Huh? Arbitrage, okay.
Because it was profit.
Yes, it was probably to borrow money.
Right.
And the IRS didn't like it. They had a problem. I never really understood the problem. Oh, it's making money. We're going to call this meeting back to order. We're going to have a discussion regarding the water, sewer, Mr. Secretary, item number 5.
Item number 5, discussion of the water sewage capital improvement bonds with the City of Warren Bond Council. Mr. John Ash.
I've given you a report that we worked up after a meeting with your staff who were all here. And basically, there are a number of bond issues which will be needed over the next few years. And they're kind of listed starting on page 1. And they continue over on page 2. The first bond issue, which is proposed, is a bond issue to be issued this year. And we prepared, I think the estimates are, and this is based upon the estimates that have been prepared by the staff, we've indicated a debt service schedule, which we have included in the appendices. I'm not going to refer to those until we get through, or if you have any questions. The second issue, that will be a publicly sold bond issue, which is the usual kind you're used to. We paid for it entirely by the proceeds of your sewer and water charges, which are being collected and are based upon the current rates that are in effect right now. So there will not be necessary for you to increase the rates any above whatever has already been authorized. That's true of all of these bonds. They're all within the current authorized rates. We made sure of that. And that's why we did the debt schedules. Now, realize these are all estimates, but interest rates today are very low. I mean, much lower than actually I think any of us have seen. If you went back to the 1960s, that's about where we are in interest rates today. So the next issue, which is called B, that's a sewer capital improvement bond issue, and you see the initials SRF. What that means is those bonds will be sold to the state of Michigan, and the interest rate on those will be 2.5%. That's a subsidized bond issue, the federal subsidy for that bond issue. That's why you get the really low interest rate. And there are other grants which your engineering department can explain to you in connection with those. That bond issue is not scheduled to be done until 2013, so that won't be done this year. The third bond issue is another one of those called SRF, and that'll be done in 2014, and again, it will be 2.5%. And then one more, which will be in 2015, and that's a water bond issue. And that's under DWRF, but again, if we can get it qualified, and we don't know yet because it's so far out in the future, that would also be subsidized at a rate which we would expect to be 2.5%. If it can't be qualified, just because there's enough room in the qualifications to do it, and that just depends on how many projects they have at that particular time. And so far from now, we don't know for sure. Then we would sell a public bond issue there. We have calculated all of the amounts of all of those, and they're all in those schedules. They're all, based upon our current projections, going to be paid for completely, every one of those issues, by your rates that are already in effect. So you will not have, in other words, you won't have the staff or somebody coming to you in 6 months and saying, oh, by the way, we just issued these bonds, and we're about to issue them, and you got to raise the rates. That's already taken care of. The rates, when they were put in effect, they were aware of what these various projects were, and they set them high enough to cover it. So that, I think, is important, because it's certainly important to your citizens, because they're the ones who have to pay the rates. Basically, that's the program. And I think as far as the individual projects, I want to turn that over to the engineering people and let them explain to you what.
John, I have a question before we go there. In regards to these, I don't know, maybe it doesn't matter since you're going to sell at least two of them, B and C, back to the state anyways for
Right.
2.5. But in regards to A, the water and sewer capital improvement funds, are those, when you say they're tied to your current rates, it's not like special revenue, it's still a general obligation bond, right?
We're going to issue what we call capital improvement bond, but we're going to totally use revenues from the sewer and water system to pay for it.
Yeah, but is it still a general obligation
It's
bond?
a
or is it
general
special?
obligation, it's a limited tax bond, and with that, we get a much better interest rate than we would if we issued revenue.
I know, I agree, that's
That's
why,
why we do it.
because you end up having to pay for it anyways, we always talked about that.
Exactly.
Because there
But
are
you're right.
special revenue situations where DDAs will just pay,
Right.
or TIFs will just pay.
Exactly,
All right.
that's what it is.
Good evening, Councilman Fernando, Acting City Engineer. Pertaining to item A, 2012 water and sewer capital improvement projects, we're asking for issuance of bonds in the amount of $15,680,000. That amount not only includes the projects that were listed in the 2012 water budget, but also includes additional water mains that could be potentially replaced along with our road replacement projects. Listing of that project was previously listed, described. The unidentified projects that we could potentially do along with the road replacement projects, that could be about $7.5 million after deducting what we've listed in the previous budget. It would make sense that when we remove and replace a roadway, that we should also replace or address, at least removing the sections of water mains that are under deteriorated pavement. Because otherwise, if we don't do it now, down the road, there's a potential that the water main will break and we have to come back and redo the pavement, and obviously that would not be a good approach to this pavement replacement project. That is why we want to include those repairs as part of it, or in addition to.
Part B is, our Todd Shading, facilities engineer for the city of Warren. Part B is a sewer capital improvement bond that we intend to fund through the SRF program. And this would pay for our needed interconnections between the city of Warren's sanitary sewer system and Macomb County sanitary sewer system. We are under permit mandate right now to get rid of basement flooding and to reduce the amount of overflows that we have at the treatment plant. These interconnections to the tune of $13 million would do that for us. It provide peace of mind for our citizens in terms of frequency of expecting water in their basement, and would also bring us into compliance with the DEQ's mandate that we don't overflow to waters of the state more than once every 25 years or during a 25-year design storm. This is something we really don't have an option on. It's the cheapest approach to complying with the permit mandates. Part C is also part of the, is another phase of that compliance mandate. And what that is those are relief sewers that are needed on the east side of town along the Edison corridor in 10, 11, 12, and 13-mile roads. So you can check the records. Our basement flooding is almost exclusively linked to the east interceptor. And these relief sewers are needed to provide relief to the neighborhoods, and then the overflows are needed to provide relief to the main interceptor.
Is this under C?
This is C. C.
Why do we wait till 2014 to do that? Why don't we do it now?
Well, because all it would do is clog up the east interceptor. There's nowhere for the water to go in there. If we had sewers on the main interceptors right now, it brings the flow faster to the east interceptor where it stops. And it's still going to back up into the neighborhoods until we have the overflow points connected.
Are you saying we're going to have to do B before we do C?
Yes.
Well, that's why you had them in. But I mean, I just, you know, it seems like it's such a problem. And it's like, why we wait in 2013 for B? Is it just financially?
That is the schedule that's in our permit, first of all. And that's when we can finally afford to do the work.
Oh, okay, so it is financial.
Sure.
All right.
We've been
It's
collecting.
just not permitted. You could maybe get permits a little bit faster if you had to.
We could.
Okay.
We could. And that also involves an ongoing negotiation with Macomb County that has not reached conclusion yet.
Okay. Would it do any good to, well, it seems to be in my district, go down that Edison corridor, fixing the roads and somehow addressing the sewers?
The local
Can we
sewer.
kill two birds with one stone there?
I'm sure Don will address any leads or any localized sewer problems that she finds with the road work, but the local sewers themselves are sized adequately to convey the flow. It's the interceptor itself,
All right, so
and
that's
then
nothing
in the
like
larger
it.
sewers in your main roads that need to be upsized.
All right, we were just addressing, in A, we're just addressing the old stuff, water and or sewer that needs to be replaced. Not much effect on the flooding in that regard.
That's correct.
As long as it's clear.
I'll
I'm
turn-
sorry, was there anything?
I don't want to, no, I won't ask questions. I'll turn it back to Donna here real quick for D.
Item D basically pertains to our near future improvements that we've already identified citywide, several locations that the water mains are either severely deteriorated, they experience a great number of breaks, and they're very costly to repair and maintain, or simply they're very undersized and they don't provide adequate firefighting capacities. So we've submitted to the state for the drinking water revolving fund loans, and we're awaiting funding. We're very high, I believe right now we're second from the last applicant that was submitted, so we're hoping that that goes through, and if it doesn't, then we would still seek correct funding for this, because they still need to be replaced to bring the system up to par. It's just that revolving funding would give us a better interest rate. Correct.
And does anybody have any can we take questions at this time? Because we don't have any, at least into the A, B, C, and D, right? We still have to talk about it. But the revenue is just like you talked about. The revenue is just gonna pay for the bond.
That's right.
Yes, thank you. I just have a couple questions. Have we already put our paperwork in, and are we on the list for these projects for the revolving funds?
With regards to C and D, since it's mandated in our permit, it gives us, B and C, I'm sorry. It's
Yeah.
mandated in our permit, so that gives us an advantage in the point scoring system. Last time we applied, we were probably halfway up the list, but we didn't have our current permit.
Okay.
Now we have our-
That's why we didn't get it.
And that's why we didn't get it.
Okay.
So now it says in your permit, Warren, you're gonna do this, otherwise you're gonna be, susceptible to fines or consent order or whatever the DEQ decides to do. So that gives us an extra 350 points on our application, which will put us up at the fundable level. So as soon as we can finish our negotiations with Macomb County and get a contract in place, present this plan to the DEQ and have it approved, boom, we can reapply and we'll be right up on top of the list.
So what do we still have to do as far as the county, twist Mr. Morocco's arm?
That's what the administration is working with.
Smooth that over, do we?
Yeah.
What about the drinking water revolving fund?
We are already on the list.
Yeah.
Yes, and we will stay on the list until we get funded or we withdraw the application.
Okay. The question I have as far as the monies. The monies that are in the hopper are going to be able to cover the bonds, principal and interest at 2.5. What if we don't get it at 2.5?
Well,
How high can we go?
we don't think there's much chance on either of those projects that you won't get it at 2.5 because that's mandated. And in other words, they can't force you to do the work if they don't give you enough points so you can issue the 2.5 if you follow. The two kind of go hand in hand. The only one that we don't know about for sure on the 2.5 is the drinking water, and that's partly because it's so far out in the future. We can afford that even if we don't get it. We've already calculated it both ways.
Mr. Stevens, if you look at Appendix F1.
What?
Appendix F1.
Good news, bad news. They're mandating you to give you 2.5% to do it.
Exactly, yeah, that's
Such
part
a
of the
deal.
If you look at that schedule there, Appendix F1, that one is showing it calculated as if we had a public sale for the 2015 issue for the drinking water, and we didn't get the 2.5%. Assuming we get the SRF 2.5% for the 2013 and 14 issues, you can see the revenues over debt service. So you can see that there's ample reserve of at least $430,000, even if we weren't to get the SRF funding. So that still should not be an issue.
All right, so this can all happen without, like was pointed out, you're not gonna come back to council and say, the money that's been allocated over, in last budget or whatever, we need more money.
Right. As an example, in the 2012 series, all those items that Donna had mentioned were all in your 2012 budget. So those were all capital items within your 2012 budget already. So this is just, what we wanted to show you today was not only do we need to bond for that for the 2012 budget, but also in 13, 14, 15, we wanted to show you 4 years out that we have all these other capital concerns and that the funding that you guys have put in place over the last, since what, 2008, will pay for this without a problem.
That's my concern right there.
So that's a reasonable concern.
Right.
Because you have all these other projects, we know about them, and therefore we want to make sure we have enough revenue to cover them. And we do.
Excellent, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions from council members? is, you know, everybody's talking about fixing these sewer problems, you know what I mean? And it's like we're, gotta wait till 2013 to fix it. And that's, anyway, if there's no
I
further.
have one other question. On the water mains, what are we looking at? Are we going back with, what kind of material? Are we looking at PVC by chance?
No, we probably will be sticking with the ductile iron. It's the material that's mostly preferred for maintenance. And we had installed PVC pipe or HDPE.
Right.
Could there be cost savings? Possibly, but overall, afterwards, when it comes to maintenance and repairs, because of our departments, our water division departments and practices and experience with maintaining the ductile, it's easier for them to do this. And,
Well, it's what they're used to. But PVC is cheaper, and once you learn to work with it, you learn to work with it. It's like anything. You know? I just think there's a substantial amount of money that could be saved by going with plastic pipe.
When did we first put our water lines in? 50s, 50s, 60s, okay? And are you saying the technology hasn't improved since 1960 to where there's a better way to build this mousetrap? Is that what we're saying?
there are newer materials, but
Detroit, we're still putting in
it's just
wood
like
water
concrete.
mains.
Concrete was introduced in the beginning of 1900s, and it's still a well-performing material. The same thing with ductile pipe. It's a very good material. In terms of life expectancy, it has between 50 and 70 years too.
So
life
back to my previous
expectancies.
question, the technology hasn't improved. Technology has not improved that particular item.
We introduced new materials, but the old material worked, except everything will fail with, in time or will deteriorate. And there's a lot of factors and variables they come to. Could there be installation? Could there be pipe itself? Right now, over the past several years, we've been actually covering our pipe, ductile pipe, in a plastic material that reduces corrosion and other things. So yes, there have been other things that have been implemented over the past few, several years that haven't been done when the initial installation happened. But it's been preferred type of pipe to be used. However, we're not excluding that we will not install a different type. And we'll probably take a look at each location.
That's a good
What
point.
does Southfield do?
That's a good point as far as pulling liners through. It's easier to do it with plastic pipe than it is ductile.
Correct. There is applications currently available for lining. However, not all water mains are suitable for that. That could be explored and looked at, and there could be cost savings to that method, but not, like I said, not every pipe is suitable for that application.
Under the Steenberg administration, I know we put a lot of HDPE pipe in the ground, and we've had a real varied experience with it, in that the service work and the valving and the hydrants and whatnot are a little bit harder to construct for whatever reason, and we've had some failures with that. The mainline pipe being fine, but a lot of the joints we had some failure issues with. The new PVC pipe with push-on joints, it's pretty good stuff. And I know that our water department uses PVC for some of the repairs, but in terms of the main installation, I don't know. We've always had issues with the corpse in them. There's been main splits and that type of thing. That we said the technology's improved, so
Right.
something we can look at.
Especially if it's like a whole subdivision that you're going to do or something too. I think it's worth looking into. So, anyways, that's my 2 cents.
Just want to point out one other thing. If you look at Appendix A-2, what's going to be coming to you soon is going to be that, if you look at the fourth item down there, we'll be coming with a bond resolution. It will probably be on the next City Council agenda, the March 13th agenda, I believe, if I got the right date there. So just wanted to let you be aware of that.
Okay, thank you. I guess that's where the council secretary.
What's that? I'm sorry? Oh, it's going to be on the agenda.
It's coming.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm teasing you, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm glad you're gonna let us, yeah, I'm glad you're gonna let us. Anybody else? All right, thank you very much. We'll go to, next item, Mr. Secretary.
Item 6, audience and opportunities for citizen participation.
Henry Kostovchik, resident of District 3. I have 2 questions. Cecil St. Pierre made a remark on the block grant money that the administrative costs far exceeds the money used for the project. The goal is what? Create jobs or enhance the depressed neighborhoods? The other thing that bothers me is the fact is that these people working there with federal money, which is like a cyclical progress in there. Sometimes you get 5 million, sometimes you get 1 million. Why do we have full-time employees? Why can't they be contracted? The other thing is, are these employees on our pension plan? That the money's coming out of the general fund, not out of the federal fund? Are they contributing to the federal fund? Cecil St. Pierre, I'd like to have that question answered. You are my representative, are you not?
I am District 3, that's correct.
That's right, I just woke you up on that.
No, you didn't. I knew I was District 3 for about since I started running.
Will you answer your question?
I'll try to. I will have, I can't answer, when you say, can I answer the question?
Okay, my email
I will
address-
follow it up, I will follow it up through the
email
council
address,
secretary
Cecil.
to have those questions answered through the administration. Those are good questions,
My
I'd like to know the answer
email
to.
address is henryfrank711@aol.com. Number 2.
Probably not on what,
.com. AOL.com.
AOL. Okay, I'm sorry.
The amount of money that's going to be spent, that 5-year forecast, Cecil St. Pierre, can you tell me, is that going to be citywide or designated areas?
What 5-year?
The agenda thing. I'll read you the agenda item, if you are not familiar with this. It's a discussion of the city of Warren.
Oh, from July 1st to, okay. That was the discussion for the 5-year forecast.
Is it citywide, this money going for?
Yes. The community development body.
Can I quote you on that? Citywide, right?
Yeah, CDBG, I think it is a certain geographical spot, and the other ones are just, as far as I know.
In other words, anybody in any district can apply for the money, is that what you're saying?
But,
very
I know
low,
what you did.
low, or
You're
moderate.
absolutely right, but the president, council president apparently is not familiar with the law. I thought maybe you would give me an answer, but that's what we're talking about. It's only for the depressed designated
So I just
areas.
said for CDBG, I'm not gonna argue with you, go on, audience participation.
Oh, that's right, you broke your rule, didn't you?
I'm trying to accommodate you, but go ahead.
You're your own self. The point is, no time was this mentioned, what district is this money going to be allocated to? It isn't a depressed district. Not one council person said, hey, where is this money going? Talked about everything else. You had some good points there, Cecil, I agree with them. Some of that money should be used for these people that are in these homes that can't afford to keep them up. And that's what Kelly Collusion is complaining about. They become rentals after a while. They go on a tax roll. And we're losing people that way. That money should be allocated to these people. Like Cecil said, put some windows in there, put the roof in there and what have you, enhance the neighborhoods that we have. Otherwise, we're losing. Anyway, Cecil, you can email the answers to a few questions.
and the changes that the citizens voted on for our district. And that each council person start to act according to the charter and take it seriously. My next complaint would be, I will address my issues to you. Hopefully you will give me a response and address my needs as you're my district. Cooperation is always good among what you guys do right. And that's to balance the budget. We have an expenditure, we have money, we have projects. These projects are for the benefit of the seat of citizens. And I feel as a citizen, we're not being heard. Nobody asks us to participate in this study. Or give us our opinion on a project. But yet,
There's public hearings at all these, that we had
the
today.
public hearings sometimes do not address adequately enough before an issue escalates out of control. When you take property away at a public hearing, an abatement. Those are serious issues. Legally, by law, I don't know how we can get away with it, but it's a process we've been doing for a long, long time. It's about time you go back to basic changes, charter made, and the people represent. You represent my district. I voted for you. I didn't vote for this council person or Kelly, or Mr. Green, or Sadowski. You're my representative, and I expect answers and responsibilities from you. My other concern would be participation and rules. If the Open Meeting Act is being violated, and we can't come to reasonableness on how our meetings are being conducted, and the meeting is for the public, the meeting is for you. You are doing business and making decisions, running this beautiful city of ours that I live in. And if all of us move out, we still be left in this city, empty homes. Because the representation is not being heard by the citizens. And I hope you remember who put you in office, it's the people that voted for you. But my vote is going to count for this district, or your district. So, people don't come because they feel they're shut. They have to shut up, they got the 3-minute rule. Reasonableness is 5 minutes in most cities, in most local governments. And if you can't give respect back to the citizen and give decent time to everybody who speaks at the council meeting, take it for what it's worth. Change the proceedings so that's fair. Look at commission, their rules. When you go and speak at their meeting, come to their meeting at the next meeting and see we get 5 in the first segment, 5 at the last. That's 10 minutes, you guys. Think about it.
Thank you. Anybody else audience participation?
Hi, I'm Joe. I live in District 2. Mr. Sadowski, I have a problem the administration has not addressed. And you can email me at motownjoefund.com if you know that. Pretty much, last time I spoke at the council meeting, I was mentioning how the city destroys its own roads with big garbage trucks. And when these vendors come in, what they do is they use destructive means to break up a small section of the street. And what it does is it cracks the rest of the streets and the driveways. It was a month ago that the water department came by the very next day after the council meeting and dug up my neighbor's, the water access to the street, put a big mound of dirt on my lawn, and in essence, they filled in the hole, put the grass back, but there's this, they cracked the sidewalk, and there's basically a 8 by 10 area where I had clay and stuff in the grass. And of course, I called the very next day to the water department, and the water department said, this is an engineering issue. And then I called the engineering department, Art called me back and goes, no, the water department screwed it up, so this is a water issue. And then what I ended up doing was calling public services, spoke with Anne Marie, and she said she put in a request that basically that this is the water department's issue. Meanwhile, I had my neighbor saying, what did you do to your lawn? And what it really comes down to is I read the new improved rules and procedures that citizens should go to the administration first and only go to council when there's problems. So when I called Anne Marie today, she said, she put me on hold, and then she said, you'll have to call the hard. So I'm back to square one. And in essence, it was the city that came by, dug up the hole, and messed up my lawn. And the real deal comes down to is these big garbage trucks are living up Stanley. And when they went through last year on August, in August when they presented the millage proposal, the fact comes down to is they presented information back from 2004, I believe it was, or 2006. And just in all the projects that the dollar amounts for the projects in the first $7.8 million. I'm going to submit for maybe next council my FOIA denial regarding the Home Business United presentation to the residents or voters in District 2, where we had the choice between $84 a year or this $900 assessment. My FOIA basically was asking, where did you come up with these studies and figures that it was $900 a year over a 15-year time period, when in fact the special assessments in the city are only for a 10-year time period. It really comes down to, I'm surprised that Mr. Axe went after he presented the bonds. Now, you talked about Raymond Phillips, he's been the auditor for 14, 15 years, and now you're going out and doing this for the best bang for the buck. And I think that that's great, because as a professional service, perhaps before we take a look at all of these bond issues that are going to be fed through the current water and sewer, that maybe that we look at going out and seeking other bond councils, or looking into the existing bonds that we have and finding out that refinancing could be an option through other bond council. And the reason I mention this is because of Home Business United, there was $54,000 raised in the latest triennial, and X was one of the early contributors of $3,000. Why would he contribute $3,000 to our city unless he had something to gain from? And this is really what I look at, is that there are certain people within the administration, certain engineering firms, these professional service firms, the engineering firms, HRC and AEW, basically contribute huge amounts of money in the $12,000 range, and they're going to get some contracts out of this. Basically what I'm looking at, and I'll end it right here, is the idea of, if you're going to go through and look at the bonding issue in the next agenda, is to actually go out and take a look at whether or not that someone else can actually give us a better deal. Over at the Employee Retirement Health Board, they had Morgan Stanley come in there, and they spent an hour talking about all the economics of affecting the retirement system, and they're very intelligent. And the idea is that Mr. Axe has been around forever, and the idea is that if they're pushing ahead through and giving you the schedules based upon the current water and sewer rate, why not just all of a sudden go out and look for additional information from the vendors that we already have with the retirement system, or go out and say, hey, we have this type of bond that needs to be floated. See, the thing that gets me is that Donna Dervisky is listed in the trial as an employee at Anderson AEW. So this is really where I look at it, is that they pushed the millage through and said, oh, okay, we're going to improve the roads, but the idea is my road going to be fixed? Is it going to be in my district? Is all 5 districts going to be split money in the first $7.8 million? Now we're going to push this sewer, this additional infrastructure capital improvement bond, but the real deal comes down to, is a split? But I'll end it there. I have to see my 3 minutes. But I had a FOIA now, and the issue really comes down to is that I looked at the 90-minute presentation last August, and really the leader came up with the slideshow that's available on the website, and I saw so much information regarding the details of what we got was from the Home Business United flyer. And the real deal behind it is very easy to calculate that $84 is a lot better to spend than $900. Where did they come up with $900 figures? And at the same time, she even said to council at the time, we went through studies, and yet I submit a point and says, we don't consider this to be a public record. And that's really where the lack of information to the citizens, the rendering of informed decisions. Now, and the idea, and I'll just end it here, it's to say, maybe you should think about, even though engineering is saying that we need to do this, and I fully agree. Don't fix the roads unless you look at what's underneath the roads, is that we take a look at this $13 million, $15 million, take a little bit closer and maybe go out for bids on the bonding issue, because Mr. Rex has been around for quite some time. And I looked at his fees, and perhaps we could find somebody who could float the same thing for half the price.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
Good evening, good evening, Mr. Sadowski, Mr. Stevens, and Mrs. Collegio. Tomas Bonnie, resident of Warren. First, I'd like to compliment one of the other council members here. Mr. Bacamino, you made a good point regarding the employees for CDBG. In fact, the Parks and Rec millage is actually being used to pay employees in other departments. So why would we need to use CDBG funds to pay for part-timers if Parks and Rec has the money to pay for other departments? It doesn't make any sense to me. Mr. Stevens, I must also commend you. Great point regarding investing in existing properties. We seem to be building a lot of properties throughout the city, and we spent so much money on building them that they aren't really investable at the end of the day. Next here is, I received a letter in the mail today regarding my FOIA appeal. It says, "It is respectfully suggested that arrangements will be made to attend this meeting in order that you may represent your best interests. Hopefully tomorrow I will receive that opportunity to represent my best interests." My only concern on that is that given past experience and the e-packet documentation, that tomorrow's appeal may end up being nothing more than grandstanding by various council members. If that is the intent, then I caution against that, including but not limited to the fact that it is against the council rules of procedure. With that, have a nice day.
Anybody else?
Chris Pasternak, resident in District 5, Councilman Bacamino, Councilman Stevens, Councilwoman Collegio, the three that represent my interest, I hope. First thing I'm going to ask is, Joe brought up a good point about roads and weights. In Lansing, I do believe they talk about allowing a third trailer on semis, increasing the weight load. We should talk to our lobbyists and ask them to make sure that doesn't happen, and to actually reduce the weight limits that are currently in effect, because Michigan has one of the most lenient policies according to that. Another interesting thing that I thought for a recommendation is for the grass cutting and snow removal. Why not do community service to the courts and have those people go around cutting the grass and taking care of the snow, so we're saving on the labor costs, and we just have to supply the equipment and gas. Just a suggestion. Like Mr. Banya said, Henry wants to, Mr. Bowman wants to have salaries included in the grants, but Parks and Rec has a surplus of funds in millions of dollars. Why do they need a simple $50,000 covered by a grant that should be spent for the citizens who need it? Because CDBG funds, all those other funds in those groups and those grants are for the less fortunate who need that money. And it shouldn't be for our best interest or for the city to cut costs in other departments. They have their own millage. They should be paying for their own employees out of their own millage. Shouldn't be coming out of the general fund, and if it is, there's big issues there. Very interesting in how Rose Furlong brought up that the grant is decreasing, yet the administrative cost is increasing. She made a comment to that, which was very weird to me, because question was asked by Councilman Bacamino about administrative costs. Why are they going up from this year to next year? You know, from 11 to 2012, and we were told because the grant went up. But then 5 minutes later, not even, Rose states something completely contradictory, that the grant has decreased in the dollar amount, but yet the administrative costs are going up. Very troubling. And I'm also going to warn the rest of the council, be very careful about disenfranchising the citizens. Okay? I can only elect 3, not all 4 of you. And there's very, very bad things that can happen when you guys decide, if the 3 representatives that should have my best interest are looking out for my interest and vote for it, and yet the other 4 decide, no, it's not in the best interest of our district or our interests, and vote against it, you're disenfranchising the citizens. Because I have no way of removing you from office. Be very careful. Because you might cause the rise of Erie Township to come back, or Erin Township.
Anybody else? We'll, adjournment? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.